In the US and in most Western societies, there's a constant battle for the control of information. It's always been the case. You know, you look back to the Gulf of Tonkin incident with the Vietnam War, that's how we got into Vietnam. You look at, false accusations against Iraq for WMDs, weapons of mass destruction, and even now with what Israel is doing in Palestine. Hell, for the 75 years of what Israel's been doing to Palestine. So, in a recent article I wrote talking about the war on TikTok and how it's being driven by misinformation, mostly from our elected officials. I'm Arturo Dominguez. I'm a racial justice and human rights advocacy journalist, and I cover propaganda, misinformation, and all kinds of stuff as part of my work. In this article and for this post, I'm going to use the Republican senator from Tennessee, Marsha Blackburn, as an example because a little over a week ago, she gave a speech in the Senate and she targeted TikTok. And she used a ton of misinformation and she propagandized a lot of what people are talking about on social media in general. In part of her speech, she mentioned, and I'm going to read this, I'm going to quote it. It says, anti-Israel sentiment and support for Hamas terrorism has gone mainstream, and even Biden administration officials like Jake Sullivan admit that Hamas is using popular online platforms to push propaganda. Of course, TikTok is the enabler in chief in this regard. Here are some stats for you. Between October 23rd and 30th, videos with the Stand with Palestine hashtag received 285 million views globally, while videos with the Stand with Israel hashtag received just 64 million views. Then she goes on to talk about how TikTok is silencing Americans. So she's using global numbers to argue that because more people are talking about the plight of Palestinians around the world on TikTok, somehow this is silencing Americans. And that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the propaganda attacking social media platforms. So she follows up her comments about silencing Americans with this right here. By silencing Americans and those who are pro-Israel and other Westerners who counter anti-Semitic propaganda, they can ingratiate themselves with the Arab world and undermine the United States as the global superpower and chief mediator in the Middle East. They know that by doing this, they are normalizing terrorism and genocide, but it puts the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, and their partners in the new axis of evil, even one step closer to global domination, and that is their goal. TikTok, global domination. I mean, did you see the stretch? How it goes from Stand with Palestine gets more views to silencing Americans to now all of a sudden it's global domination. The fact that she considers the United States some sort of mediator in this whole conflict, I mean, we just saw it yesterday, right? At the UN Security Council, UK abstained and the United States vetoed a resolution calling for a ceasefire, something the majority of Americans, even 55% of Republicans in the United States, are asking for. Everybody wants a ceasefire. They don't. And of course, she goes on, well, I've looked through the past few weeks of coverage and the role of TikTok and how they played into this, and I came across story after story defending the platform with good reason and the fire hose of pro-terrorist content that it promotes. So again, here we are, right? If you're pro-Palestinian, you're pro-terrorist, right? If you want the liberation of Palestinians or a free Palestine, you're pro-terrorist. And here we go again, right? It's just right in line with the whole anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism and blah, 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 right? Joe Biden says he's a Zionist. So if I criticize Joe Biden, am I anti-Semitic even though he's not Jewish? Of course not. So then, she continues to ramble on, right? She went on for like 10 or 12 minutes and she's talking about bipartisan agreement that the very existence of this tool, this surveillance, this propaganda tool that the Chinese Communist Party has created, which we call TikTok, there's evidence that the very existence of this poses a threat to our national security and that of our allies. So essentially, the goal here is to silence the younger generations, right? The generations we raised, right? Gen Xers. They want to silence our kids. They want to silence us, the same people who grew up on Rage Against the Machine and things like that. Um, this is an attack on free speech. That's all there is to it. There's more anti Semitism on Twitter than there is here. I mean, the biggest anti Semite in the world, Elon Musk, owns the place. Nobody's talking about banning Twitter, right? And when you talk about guys like Elon Musk, right, and I mentioned Glenn Beck and Nick Fuentes and Richard Spencer, a whole host of other far right, blatant neo Nazis, right, who are taking sides with Israel in this conflict because it's not about a Jewish state. This is a colonialist deal. It always has been. These are mostly white European peoples whose nationalities, Poland, the United States, England, these are Westerners that are creating Israel. So, of course, these right-wing fucksticks are going to take sides with a colonialist project like that. But then this, Libs of TikTok, Shia Raichik, I guess that's how you say her name, she's a huge homophobe, right? Works with the Proud Boys. Every time she points out where there's a drag queen story hour or something like that, where do the Proud Boys go? Exactly where she tells them. And what did the ADL do? Once she started showing support for Israel, they took her off the glossary of extremists page on their website. And then you have Netanyahu inviting Elon Musk to talk about the rebuilding of Gaza. You got Glenn Beck, who's anti-Semitic, lost his job on Fox News for being an anti-Semite. And here he is begging Israel for citizenship. Again, the idea that elected officials would go so far to ban an entire social media platform speaks to just how impactful losing the propaganda war is in Western societies. This is a war for information. It's not about social media. It's not about anti-Semitism. This is about losing the propaganda war to a generation who's continuously getting smarter and smarter because the internet provides all the information we need. That was the intent of the internet. It was known as the information superhighway when it was coming up. We all remember that. All us Gen Xers do. And here we are. People are educating themselves. They're learning the truth. And the propaganda machine just doesn't work anymore. It doesn't. And for that, they want to silence entire generations. They want to silence the platforms that they use. The truth is that TikTok provides users with a creative outlet to express themselves through videos all the way up until 10 minutes long. They're not just short little misinformed videos that don't allow for context. This video right here is pushing 8 minutes, probably go the full 10 because I need to provide you all the context that's in my article and what these politicians are doing. The platform has become a battleground simply because of politicians driving a war that's fueled by propaganda. And it's a propaganda war that they're losing. Major media is losing it. The paper of record, New York Times, was just caught trying to fix stories in a pro-Israel context. Like, they called out a journalist. Actually, they DM'd a journalist, and the journalist posted it on Twitter, and they got exposed. I'll probably do a video about that sooner. They try to tell us how complicated the situation is in Palestine when it's really not. It's an apartheid. It's a genocide. It's an ethnic cleansing. And Western governments are promoting it just like we did in South Africa, just like we're doing in the Congo, just like we're doing in Latin America, just like we're doing everywhere. The game's over. The propaganda machine is dying, and they don't know what to do. So they're coming after us. So make sure to go to theantagonistmag.com. It's the most recent article. You could see the full speech that Senator Marsha Blackburn gave. There's also a video of me talking trash about, the neo-Yazis over there losing their mind, trying to figure out who to hate more. But yeah, the whole speech is there. The article is there. Check it out. Read. Hit up the shop. Hit the donate button. Support our work. And I'll see you guys on the next one.